I was standing at the kitchen sink rinsing the dinner dishes when my granddaughter padded in from the living room, still wearing her backpack. She hadn't even taken her shoes off yet. That was unusual for Lily. She was the kind of child who walked through the door and immediately shed everything: shoes by the mat, backpack on the hook, jacket on the floor, despite every reminder I gave her. But that Tuesday afternoon, she stood in the kitchen doorway, still fully dressed, fidgeting with the zipper on her bag, and she had a look on her face I hadn't seen before. Not sad, exactly. More like she was trying to figure out how to say something she wasn't sure she was allowed to say. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands. "Hey, sweet pea, how was school?" She didn't answer right away. She came over and leaned against the counter next to me, and I noticed she was chewing on her bottom lip the way her mother used to do when something was bothering her. That little habit stopped my heart for just a second the way it always did. My daughter Sarah had been gone for 2 years by then. A driver ran a red light on a Wednesday morning in November, and just like that, Lily lost her mother and I lost my child. Danny, Lily's father, was in his second deployment overseas with the Army. He called every Sunday when he could. He was a good man doing his best in an impossible situation, and we both agreed that Lily staying with me was the right thing until he came home. So it was just the two of us, Lily and me, in the house I had lived in for 31 years. My husband Richard was there too, of course, though I'm getting ahead of myself. "Grandma," Lily said, still not looking at me, "can I ask you something without getting in trouble?" I turned to face her fully. "You can always ask me anything. You know that." She reached into the front pocket of her backpack and pulled out a small, orange prescription bottle. The label had been scratched off. Not peeled, cleanly scratched, like someone had worked at it with a fingernail. She held it out to me. "Miss Donna gives me these. She says they're children's vitamins to help me focus at school." She paused. "But they make me feel really sleepy and kind of floaty. And she told me not to tell you because you'd worry for no reason." Another pause. "But I don't like keeping secrets from you." I took the bottle from her hand and I did not let her see what went through me in that moment. I kept my face calm, and I kept my voice even, and I told her she was absolutely right to tell me, and that she was the bravest, most wonderful girl I had ever known, and I sent her to wash up for dinner. Then I stood at that kitchen sink for a very long time staring at the scratched-off label on that bottle. Donna lived 3 houses down. She was 46, recently divorced, and she had moved onto our street about 14 months earlier. She'd introduced herself with a bottle of wine and a casserole, and a smile that I had thought, at the time, was just friendliness. She had taken a particular interest in Lily early on, always waving her over when she was outside, always offering snacks and small gifts. I had been grateful for it, honestly. After everything Lily had been through, I was glad she had a warm presence nearby, someone who made her feel special. I unscrewed the cap on the bottle. Inside were pink oblong pills, not gummies, not anything that looked remotely like a children's vitamin. They were adult-sized tablets, and when I held one up to the light I could see a faint embossed marking on one side, partially worn but still there. I took a photo of it with my phone. I called my friend Carol. Carol and I had known each other for 35 years. We met at a neighborhood book club that neither of us actually attended for the books, and we had been inseparable ever since. She had spent her entire career as a family physician and had only retired the year before. She answered on the second ring. "I need you to look at something," I said. "Can I come over right now?" She heard something in my voice, because Carol always does. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. I left Lily with Richard, who had just come home from wherever he had been that afternoon. He had been coming home later and later over the past few months, always with explanations that were just plausible enough that I hadn't pushed back. Work, traffic, a colleague who needed help with something. I was 63 years old and I had been married to that man for 38 years, and I told myself that I trusted him. I had told myself that a lot of things lately. I told him I was running to Carol's for an hour, and I showed him the pill bottle and said Donna had been giving these to Lily and I needed Carol to look at them. I watched his face when I said it. He blinked. He said, "What? Why would she do that?" And his voice had exactly the right amount of confusion in it. I drove to Carol's. She was waiting at the door for me. I handed her the bottle without saying anything, and she carried it to her kitchen table under the bright overhead light and put on her reading glasses. She turned the bottle over in her hands, then shook 3 pills into her palm, then held one up the same way I had. I watched her face change. She set the pill down carefully. The way you set something down when you need your hands to be doing something purposeful so you don't react the way you want to react. "Margaret," she said, "these are diphenhydramine." I didn't know what that was, and she could tell. "It's the active ingredient in Benadryl," she said. "Adult strength, 25 milligrams per tablet." She looked at me over her glasses. "For an 8-year-old girl who weighs 60 pounds, this would cause significant sedation, confusion, that floaty feeling Lily described, depending on how many she was given and how often." She stopped. "How long has this been going on?" I didn't know. That was the thing that hit me standing there in Carol's kitchen. I didn't know, because I hadn't known it was happening at all. My granddaughter had been coming home from school and sleeping on the couch, and I had thought she was just tired from a long day. I had made her soup. I had tucked a blanket around her. I had told Richard she seemed worn out lately, and he had nodded and said kids go through phases. He had nodded and said kids go through phases. Carol was watching me. She has a doctor's face for moments like this, steady, present, not rushing me. "She said Donna told her they were vitamins," I said. "She said Donna told her not to tell me because I'd worry for no reason." I heard myself say the words, and they didn't sound real. "She's been giving my granddaughter adult sleeping pills and telling her to keep it secret from me." Carol reached across the table and took my hand. "You need to go home," she said quietly. "You need to find out everything you can before you say a word to anyone, and then you need to call the police." I drove home in a state that I don't have a good word for. Not panic. Something colder and more focused than panic. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it had settled into something I recognized. It was the same thing I had felt the night they called me about Sarah. That moment of absolute stillness before the grief arrives, when your mind is somehow perfectly clear because everything that doesn't matter has been stripped away entirely. Lily was already in her pajamas. Richard had given her dinner and she was watching television in the living room. I sat with her for a while and I asked her gentle questions, the way Carol had coached me on the phone on the drive home, careful not to frighten her. I asked her how often she took the vitamins from Miss Donna. She said most days after school, whenever she saw her outside. I asked if Miss Donna ever came inside our house. Lily said sometimes. When Grandpa was home. I asked if she knew what they talked about. Lily shrugged and said she usually went to her room because Miss Donna and Grandpa liked to watch grown-up TV. I kissed Lily on the top of her head and I told her she did absolutely nothing wrong and that I loved her more than anything in the world, and I sent her to brush her teeth. Richard was in the kitchen refilling his coffee. I came in and I asked him casually, the way you ask about something that doesn't matter, whether Donna had ever come inside while I was out. He said no, not really. Maybe once or twice to drop something off. His back was to me when he said it. I said goodnight and I went to bed before him. I lay there in the dark and I thought about everything very carefully, and by the time I heard him come upstairs I had a plan. The next morning I waited until Richard left for work. I knew he wouldn't be where he said he was going. I had known that for a while, I think, in the way you know things you're not ready to know yet. I went to his desk in the study. He kept his laptop there and he had never been particularly careful about locking it because for 38 years he had had no reason to be careful around me. I found the messages in under 10 minutes. Not emails. A messaging app I had never heard of, still logged in on the browser. There were hundreds of them going back 8 months. I did not read all of them. I read enough. I read the ones where Donna told him how much she missed him and he told her how much things would change soon, just be patient. I read the ones where they talked about their afternoons together in my house, in my home, while my granddaughter was given pills to keep her drowsy and manageable and out of the way. I found one from 3 weeks earlier where Donna said Lily had seemed more alert than usual and asked if she should give her an extra one, and Richard had replied with 3 words, use your judgment. Use your judgment. About medicating my 8-year-old granddaughter so they could have the house to themselves. I sat very still for a moment. Then I took out my phone and photographed every relevant message on that screen. I photographed the app, the conversation thread, the timestamps, all of it. Then I closed everything exactly as I had found it. I called Carol first. Then I called a family law attorney whose name I had gotten from a colleague years ago and filed away in my phone contacts the way you file away things you hope you'll never need. Then I called the non-emergency line for our local police department and explained what had happened to my granddaughter. The woman on the phone was calm and professional, and she told me an officer would come to the house within the hour. Then I called Danny. That was the hardest call I have ever made. Telling a father who is 6,000 miles away, who is already carrying more than any person should have to carry, that his daughter has been harmed in his own home while he was trusting the people who were supposed to protect her. He didn't say much for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very controlled, the way I imagine soldiers are trained to be, and he asked me if Lily was safe right now. I said yes. He asked me if I was handling it. I said yes. He said he was going to make some calls and find out if he could get emergency leave, and he would keep me posted, and he told me he loved me and he trusted me. I held the phone after he hung up for a long moment. The officer who came to the house was a woman named Detective Reyes. She was thorough and she was kind, and she sat at my kitchen table and listened to everything I told her, and she looked at the photographs I had taken, and she looked at the pill bottle, which Carol had placed in a Ziploc bag for me when I stopped by that morning to pick it up. Detective Reyes bagged it as evidence. She explained that giving a child medication without parental consent and without a medical need could constitute child endangerment and potentially aggravated assault depending on the circumstances and the dosage. She said she would be in touch. After she left, I stood in my kitchen and I thought about whether I wanted to wait or whether I wanted this to be done. I decided I was tired of things happening in my house that I didn't know about. I was 63 years old and I had buried my daughter and I had raised my granddaughter and I had kept this family together through more than most people are asked to endure, and I was done waiting for other people to decide when I was ready to know the truth. I sent Richard a text asking him to come home early. I said I needed to talk to him about Lily. That was true. I needed to talk to him about Lily very much. He came home at 4:30. I was sitting at the kitchen table when he walked in. I had a cup of tea in front of me that I hadn't touched. Lily was at Carol's house. I had made sure of that. He sat down across from me and he said, "What's going on? Is Lily okay?" I put my phone on the table between us, face up, with one of the photographs visible. The one where Donna asked about giving Lily an extra pill, and he replied with, "Use your judgment." I watched him look at it. I watched the exact moment he understood what he was looking at. The way his expression shifted not into guilt, not right away, but into a kind of rapid calculation that was somehow worse than guilt would have been. "Margaret, don't," I said. My voice was very quiet. I wasn't angry, exactly. I had moved past angry somewhere around 3 in the morning the night before. I've spoken to the police. I've spoken to an attorney. I've spoken to Danny. What I would like from you right now is to understand how long my granddaughter has been given adult sedatives in this house, and whether you knew about it before or after it started. He stared at the phone on the table. I said, "The messages are time-stamped." He put his face in his hands. He said he hadn't known at first, that Donna had just been helping, that Lily had seemed fine, and I let him talk because I wanted to hear everything he would say. Some of it may have even been true. None of it mattered in the way he seemed to think it should matter. When he finished, I told him that he needed to leave. Not tomorrow. Tonight. I told him the attorney had already been contacted and that a formal separation would be proceeding, and that he should understand clearly that Detective Reyes had his name and his messages, and that how the next weeks went would depend significantly on how cooperative he chose to be. He left 2 hours later with a bag. I stood in the doorway and I watched him back out of the driveway of the house we had shared for 31 years, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not relief, exactly. Not grief either. Something more like the moment after you've been holding your breath for a very long time and you finally let it go. Donna was arrested 4 days later. Detective Reyes called me to let me know. She was charged with child endangerment and unlawful administration of a controlled substance to a minor. I won't pretend I didn't feel something sharp and satisfying when I heard those words. I am 63 years old and I am long past the age where I feel the need to pretend I don't feel things. Danny got emergency family hardship leave. He was home within 2 weeks. The night he walked through my front door and Lily ran down the hallway and leapt into his arms, I stood in the kitchen doorway and I let myself cry for the first time since any of it had happened. Not because things were fixed, they weren't. Not by a long way. There was still the divorce, still the legal proceedings, still the long work of explaining to an 8-year-old girl, carefully and in pieces, and with the help of a very good child therapist, what had happened to her and why it wasn't her fault and why the adults who should have protected her had failed her. But in that moment, watching my son-in-law hold my granddaughter like he would never let go, I let myself feel what I had been holding back, which was this. She was safe. She was here. I had gotten to her in time. There is something I want to say, because I think it matters. I almost didn't listen. Not because I didn't love Lily, I would do anything in this world for that child, and she has always known that. But I had a life I believed in. 38 years of a marriage. A version of my husband I had decided was real. And there is a kind of exhaustion that comes with loss, with grief, with years of holding everything together on your own, that makes you want to believe the comfortable thing, that the pills were vitamins, that the tired afternoons were just a phase, that the explanations were true. Lily saved herself when she decided her discomfort mattered more than keeping a secret. She came to me in that kitchen doorway with the bottle in her hand because something in her knew that what was happening to her wasn't right, even though she couldn't have named it, even though the adult she was afraid of had spent months telling her it was fine and normal and nothing to worry about. She trusted herself, and then she trusted me. I think about that a lot, about what it takes for a child to speak up when she has been specifically told not to, about what it means to her that I believed her immediately and completely, without a single moment of doubt. I hope she carries that with her. I hope when she is grown and she faces something that doesn't feel right, she remembers that her instincts protected her when she was 8 years old, and they are worth listening to. The divorce was finalized 7 months after Richard left. I won't go into the details of that process, except to say that it was every bit as painful as you would expect, and that Carol sat with me through most of it, and that I am still, genuinely, grateful for women who show up. Danny came back from his final deployment 8 months later. He and Lily are in an apartment 20 minutes from me now. She has dinner at my house every Sunday, and she has started asking me to teach her to bake, which her mother used to do with me when she was small. She asked me once, about 6 months after everything happened, whether I was sad about Grandpa leaving. She was very matter-of-fact about it, the way children sometimes are. I thought about it for a moment, and I told her the truth, which was that some things look like loss from the outside, but they're actually a door opening. She thought about that for a while, stirring brownie batter with more focus than was strictly necessary. Then she said, like how Mom leaving was sad, but also she's still with us in some ways. I couldn't speak for a second. Yes, I said, when I could. Exactly like that. She nodded and went back to the brownie batter, satisfied. I am 63 years old. I have lost people I could not afford to lose, and I have survived things I didn't know I had the capacity to survive, and I have made mistakes I will spend the rest of my life thinking about. But the thing I will never stop being is the person standing in the kitchen when my granddaughter walks through the door, the person she can come to with the things she is afraid to say, the person who will believe her. That is not a small thing. I used to think it was. I don't anymore. If you are watching this and you have a child or grandchild in your life who has tried to tell you something difficult, or who seemed off, or who suddenly started sleeping too much, or seemed quiet in a way that didn't feel like quiet, please listen. Not with half your attention. Not after you finish what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. Get down to their level. Let them feel you receiving what they are trying to give you. Children do not have the words for everything that happens to them, but they will find a way to tell you if they trust you enough. Be someone they trust enough. Lily and I talk about it sometimes, the way you talk about things that are part of your story now, that you've made room for. She is not broken by it. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, especially when the adults in their lives respond the right way. She knows she was brave. She knows I am proud of her. She knows that nothing that happened was her fault, and that every person who should face a consequence has faced one. She asked me last week if I was happy. I thought about the question honestly, the way I think she deserved. Getting there? I said. She smiled at me. Her mother's smile, which she has no idea she has. Me too, she said.